Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Thought Leaders, where we bring in different leaders from various fields of expertise. Today, we have New York Times bestselling author Dave Kerpen, who is also the co-founder and CEO of Apprentice, which is a very unique platform connecting entrepreneurs and business leaders, specifically college students. But I'm going to have you tell us a little bit more about what that is, what other things you might have going on right now, and who are you working with?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm a New York Times bestselling author of 5 books, serial entrepreneur, 7 businesses, 2 exits, and investor. And perhaps most important in my life, relevant to delegation and my recent book, Get Over Yourself, a father of 3 and husband to my wife, Carrie, and who's my business partner as well. And I have been able to build a life for myself where I'm able to prioritize my family time over all other things. And so that's probably what I'm proudest of. Apprentice, the company that you mentioned, is the company that I'm currently most focused on. It's a marketplace that connects top entrepreneurs and small business owners and executives with the top college talent, the top 5% of college talent in the world. So think of it as really wonderful year-round internships that we set up and allow thought leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, small business owners to access talent that otherwise they wouldn't have access to. The folks that are going to be working for the McKinseys and the KPMGs and the Googles of the world a year or two from now while they're in school. So that's been a wonderful platform the last couple of years. And the reason I wrote this most recent book, Get Over Yourself, was that the biggest problem in that business, I mean, you talk about a two-sided marketplace, the biggest problem in the business wasn't sourcing the college students, which I have lots of amazing students. It wasn't even sourcing customers, although we're always open to having more customers. It was helping teach my customers how to better delegate, because I found that even when I matched the entrepreneurs and business owners and executives with these top college talent, there was still a bit of a disconnect where folks wouldn't be that good at delegating. And so I wrote this book, Get Over Yourself, to help executives and entrepreneurs better delegate.
Interesting. Is that kind of how you've come up with the different ideas or themes for your past books, as well as kind of like from the operator's perspective, and then whatever kind of hurdles you're running into, you take a deep dive into that subject matter?
Yeah. I would say it's a combination of that and just attempting to scale whatever I'm doing. So I definitely identify much more as an entrepreneur than as an author, and I think of problems and try to solve them. So my first book was Likeable Social Media, and it was one of the first social media books, and it came as a time that I had a social media agency that was working with big brands. But at the same time, I realized that lots and lots of small business owners and entrepreneurs were trying to figure out social media. I couldn't work with all of them. So I figured, let me write a book that will help all of them solve some of the questions and problems that they had with social media. And then throughout my career, I've used books to help solve problems for entrepreneurs and leaders out there and scale the work that I'm doing, because ultimately, I mean, how there are, I could name like entrepreneurs that are able to scale to the billions, like on one hand, right? So there's Zuckerberg and Musk and Gates, but there are very few of those people. But if I want to impact the world, an additional way to doing that, to writing to building businesses, is writing books that can be read by millions of people. So I've been fortunate enough to do that, and that way I can help many people maybe that are watching this, that maybe they can't afford Apprentice, but they can afford Get Over Yourself for $15. So if I can help that way, then great.
Interesting. Definitely want to dive in more into the book side of things, but before we do that, I want to get back into maybe some previous chapters of your career, because before you got to starting your social media agency, Likeable, it looks like you kind of which was like kind of like your biggest, I would say, like foray into entrepreneurship at that point, right? It looks like before then you were doing, I mean, sales, marketing, you're on reality TV shows, you're doing a plethora of things, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs do, right? And kind of like go through this like weird work history before they kind of like figure out their calling as an entrepreneur. Can you walk us through what that that former, chapter look like? And then how did you find that calling ultimately to build likable in the first place? Because that seemed to be the catalyst for basically a lot of these things to come.
Yeah, well, I'll go way back for you. Because we have time and I love telling stories. So I wanted to be a teacher and I studied education at school. I got a full scholarship to Boston University to study elementary education and psychology. And throughout my college career, I still needed money to like put food on the table and whatnot. And I took a job working at the ballpark, Fenway Park, where the Red Sox play, and the Boston Garden, where the Celtics and Bruins play. And I was a ballpark vendor. And I don't know how much y'all know about the ballpark vending business, but it's very much like an entrepreneur within the system, because you only get paid based on how much you sell. It's commission only, and tips, kind of gig, and you have to work your way up the totem pole to sell the hot dogs and beer, which is the big selling item. So when I first started, I had the worst selling product in the, my first day, I had the least seniority, so I had the worst selling product in the building, product called Crunch and Munch, buttery toffee popcorn with peanuts. And I sold 6 boxes my first night. I got paid the legal minimum of $15. Came back the second night thinking, it's fun to be at the ballpark, but I'd like to actually make a living. So I developed a shtick, singing, dancing, juggling boxes, a whole shtick in order to get more attention. And I sold a lot of Crunch and Munch. And I developed a routine as the Crunch and Munch guy, got some press, had one key insight. I had very little talent, if any, but I had the courage to make a fool of myself. And I also had one smart move. The day I was in the Boston Herald, featured in Boston Herald, somebody asked me for my autograph. They asked me to sign a box of Crunch and Munch. And I thought, this is interesting. And I asked them to borrow the Sharpie for the rest of the night. So I proceeded to sign every box of Crunch and Munch I sold unsolicited for the rest of the night. And what I was able to do in just one night, Chris, was I was able to create a perception in the building that not only did you need to get a box of Crunch and Munch from the Crunch and Munch guy, but you had to get it autographed. And it was amazing. Its sales skyrocketed from there. I fell in love with marketing and sales and entrepreneurship and PR and all of those types of things. At my peak, I was making over $1,000 a night, which as a college student, also, keep in mind, it was the year 2000. So it was a college student 24 years ago. It was really, really good money. So steered away from teaching, went into marketing and sales, worked at Radio Disney for a couple of years in sales and marketing, did the reality TV show thing that you mentioned. After the show, moved to New York, started dating my now wife, Carrie, and we both had a sales and marketing background, but she had been married before, Chris, and I wanted a huge wedding, but she could not, neither of us could afford a huge wedding, but we both had this idea to create a sponsored wedding promotion. We pitched the minor league affiliate of the Mets, the Brooklyn Cyclones, to do a takeover, a sponsorship inventory takeover, and get married at a baseball game. And the general manager said, "This is the craziest idea I've ever been pitched, but I actually think it might work." He gave us the rights to take over the game, essentially, from a sponsorship standpoint. And it was amazing, Chris. We sold $100,000 worth of sponsors. 1-800-Flowers.com sponsored our flowers. Smirnoff sponsored our alcohol. David's Bridal sponsored our wedding dress and bridesmaids gowns. Entenmann sponsored our desserts. We had sponsors for everything. And we ended up with an amazing wedding. I got married in front of 500 friends and family, 5,000 strangers that stayed for the wedding at the end of the baseball game. And we generated massive, massive earned media, over $50 million worth of earned media. Every major network was there. All of the online media, which back in 2003 was blogs, were all covering the event. And literally, our vendors after the event said this was amazing. 1-800-Flowers.com and Entenmann said this was great. What are you guys going to do next? And we couldn't get married again, so we started a marketing firm instead. That quickly morphed into one of the first social media marketing firms that we grew. That was renamed Likeable and sold 3 years ago. So that was the beginning, really, of my entrepreneurial career. And since then, really haven't looked back with respect to seizing opportunities, seeing problems, and looking to help solve them. So sorry, it was long-winded, but it's a pretty good story.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing story, which I feel like, you've also probably dumbed it down and there's a lot of other like exciting nuggets within that. I'm curious though, like what do you think that was what's inherent in you or innate in your personality, maybe from your childhood that like gave you the confidence at that from that ballpark game to like realize I need to get attention to in order for me to make a living here? I mean, I do think like obviously there's um I think they're just the psychological component, which is like your back is against the wall if you're not gonna if you can't make it this into something that's gonna feed you or like put food on the table, like you get really creative, I think, in those moments. And then a lot of it is just, I mean, getting over yourself, right? Like if you don't fear that judgment, don't fear the criticism, but it's like I'm just focused on the outcome no matter how I gotta do it. It makes you do some outside of the box things or think of some outside of the box things. I think what prohibits people from actually doing something like that that could yield that 50 million earned media potential is the fear part. So you don't seem to have that from a very big early part of your life. What do you think is about you that helps you overcome that? Because
Yeah,
that's probably the biggest prohibitor for most people.
I'm delighted you asked that, Chris. And I want to clarify because I think words are very important. I have lots of fear, and we all do. And I actually object. I'm glad you didn't mention it, but I do object to the word fearless. A lot of people use the word fearless. Be fearless. How can you be fearless? And I think the answer is you can't be fearless. And we're all filled with fear. All of us, every single one of us. I'm afraid I'm going to make an idiot of myself on this podcast. I'm afraid every day, lots of things. But what I do have also, and what I have been able to successfully challenge in my career, and what I will encourage everyone that's watching and listening to sum it up is courage. And courage, by definition, is action in the face of fear. So we all have lots of fear every single day. We have little fears, like I'm afraid of dogs, and we have big fears, like I'm afraid of failure. Um, Courage is, in my view, um, the self-awareness of understanding our fears and not blocking them out, not trying to say be fearless, but saying, okay, I'm afraid of this. This is scary shit. And with that awareness, the determination, the persistence to take the action required in the face of the fear, right? So to your point, sometimes you literally don't have a choice. If you are um you know being if somebody pick excuse me, if somebody like attacks you, you got to defend yourself. Like you have no choice but to summon up some sort of courage. I mean, I guess you could like shrink up in a ball and just die, but hopefully that's not the case, right? We have some instincts, right? Um, but in a business sense, many folks let fear paralyze them, and they end up making decisions out of fear and lacking the understanding and then the courage to take decisive action. So I understand it. Like the world is scary, life is scary, and the older we get and the more commitments we have, the harder it is to have courage. I mean, it was much easier for me at age 21 with
Yeah.
no mortgage and no kids to make a fool of myself in front of thousands of people because what did I really have to lose, right? And it's much harder for somebody that's watching this or listening that has a mortgage and three kids to leave a job and start a business. I totally understand that. And yet at the same time, you ask, so I will say what differentiates me from perhaps some others is that courage to be persistent in the face of fear, which I am able to really identify, and the constant, I would say, self-awareness and determination to better understand myself and improve myself, self-improvement, right? Many people, unfortunately, go through life, and it's probably not the people watching this show and listening, because the people that are watching and listening and are part of your community are driven to improve themselves. So that's great. But I think many people go through life a little blissfully ignorant, a little, let me get my job done. Let me then watch some TV and let me go to bed and drink a beer, right? And that's fine. You want to do that? That's totally fine. I'm not here to judge. I am here to say that that's probably not going to be if that's the life you choose, then maybe maybe deep down there's some fear, that's blocking, and that probably will keep you from achieving your wildest dreams of success in life. So sorry, I riff. I went on a big riff, but I'm very passionate about this, and I do think that we all. I'm not different from you or anyone watching. Because we all have the ability to summon the courage inside of us, right? I mean, watch The Wizard of Oz, like the lion finds you find the courage. Everyone has the ability to find the courage. So to me, it's a choice that we make to focus on that and to focus on the persistence, and lean into that instead of leaning into the fear, which can potentially paralyze us.
Yeah. I mean, 1000%. I totally resonate with that. I think like as somebody who was paralyzed by fear, I would say like until my late 20s before I took a chance into entrepreneurship, um, with the help of a couple of friends of mine that I've known for a couple of decades, that kind of helped me get my feet wet into that experience. But then having then gone through that with some people made me have the confidence that I could do this on my own. And that was maybe like the turning moment. But also I think like when working with founders, and I'm sure you see this a lot too, is like that courage, that the paralyzation with fear is very real for a lot of people. And I think even for us, for me and you, it's probably like exists in different ways, right? Like for me, like if you like I get paralyzed by cockroaches, like for that's my thing, but like, people have different things. Um, and I find like when working with founders, like even people that are, already going against the grain, but sometimes even on their go-to-market when they're trying to sell, when they're trying to build up their business or grow their business to a certain extent, like I do see things that they will use the same things that other people use, and maybe not for fear, like not take a risk on an idea or a unique idea, such as something that some of these things that you brought up, that you've found successful, right? Like, but not to think outside the box and try something else, right? Which could yield a 10x result versus what you're currently doing. Um, how do you think about advising somebody to muster up the courage to overcome those fears? Because I can share with you what I've seen that's worked, which is like helping people take baby steps. Because I think like a lot of times people end up getting in their own head where it's like they worry about the 10th thing that's going to potentially happen. And,
Right.
and that's the fear of that failure that's going to happen at the 10th step. And so that discourages them from even taking that first step, which obviously, now is like most of the times you take that first step, you're never even going to get to that 10th step because there's going to be 100 different paths that open up. But I'm curious as to like how you've helped others try to overcome that and muster up the courage.
Yeah, I think that's a great method. One step at a time. I would say the other thing is the what's the worst thing that could happen method, because
Perspective.
people get so wrapped up in that 10th thing and defining that as bad. Um, I studied positive intelligence, and it's in the last couple books. It's definitely in Get Over Yourself, but I think it's in The Art of People as well. And it's worth checking out, positiveintelligence.com. And with positive intelligence, the idea is we can define things as good or bad. Why choose to define things as bad? So for example, I've started 7 companies. 5 of them by the sort of conventional definitions have failed. Failure sucks. I can define those outcomes as bad and then be afraid to start another company. Or I can say, I'm still here. I'm still doing great. I learned a shit ton from those experiences, and therefore I don't need to define them as bad. I can define them as great learnings, lessons, experiences that made me who I am. And and even using the word failure, like I'm torn on this because some people are like, don't call it a failure. Well, I mean, you can say by conventional, if you start a company and it doesn't work, then by a conventional definition, it is a failure, and that's okay. But what is not okay, or rather what ends up being limiting and hurtful and harmful to our own health and our own future success, is labeling that a failure and labeling that bad and labeling that as something that now we can't do. So yes, to what you said with respect to, instead of sort of getting too wrapped up in step 10, thinking, okay, step 1, then step 2, then step 3, a day at a time, an hour at a time, a task at a time. Yes. And the other thing I would add, Chris, is when we're getting wrapped up in step 10 is a failure and my life is over, let's examine that a little bit closer and say, is it really? And if it is, then maybe the risk isn't worth taking. Like if you have a um a $1 million mortgage and a husband or wife that says that if you miss a mortgage payment, they're going to leave you, it's not the right time to leave your job and start a business. That's okay. But getting to the point where you can identify that 10th step and what that failure looks like, what that perceived failure looks like, and then saying, but wait a minute, would I really regret it? Or would I think this was a great lesson and use it to move on to the next thing? And it's that self-talk and that self-reassurance that can help us maybe take some risks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I kind of go through the different, books that you've written, right? You've even written children's book, right, called Normal, which talks about different experiences children are going through from their backgrounds with their parents and things like that. Unique experiences, hardships, challenges, etc. Um, and then you go into the art of people, and then you obviously have to get over yourself now, and you have a few other books also in between that, but uh, a lot of this is centered around the human condition, it feels like, right? Um, and I think like the human condition and perspective, I think about this, like, if I'm gonna be, might as well, lay it out too, is like, I think personally speaking, is like, it's Father's Day this weekend. I lost my father about 16 years ago after like a 10-year battle with cancer. And I just wrote this to myself this past week, which is, I feel like I know that his memory and the loss of him is ingrained into my present DNA in some shape or form, because I think about it all the time. Um, Two ways. There's one way it changes me, which is I think it's one of those insecurities that sticks on my shoulder as a chip on my shoulder, where I feel like I'm chasing the approval of a ghost. That's one aspect. I think the other aspect is the mere understanding and awareness, acute awareness of our mortality on this planet and how short-lived it is. And so you might as well live with the cup half full and take risks and take challenges, which I think is best suited me for obviously entrepreneurship and a lot of the things that I am able to stomach today. Because when you see somebody that's fighting for their life, any complaint that I personally might have probably pales in comparison to somebody that's dealing with fighting for theirs. So I'm curious how much I feel like these topics in your books come from some deeper rooted place that comes to that perspective, that conclusion around that some kind of perspective around hardship or personal experience, but then can gravitate towards to, leveraging that experience to improving various aspects of your quality of your life in different areas, whether it's building relationships, improving, your relationship with yourself, to become a better businessman or business entrepreneur. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like, I don't know if that was a conscientious thing or it's just kind of like a recurring theme, or if again that's something that's just maybe just deeper rooted organically in who you are as a person.
Yeah. I'm going to take a 30-second plugging in my charger and then I will answer that.
Okay.
Maybe less than 30 actually, but better that than the computer going dead.
Sure.
Some years ago, I was doing one of the first live webinars, literally on the internet. I had 500 people on. We were trending on Twitter. It was that easy to trend on Twitter. And my computer crashed in the middle of the webinar, and it was quite a disaster. Anyway, yeah, to answer your question, Chris, I'll answer it with two things. First, sorry to hear about your dad. And my dad, I lost my dad a couple years ago too, and he was I think our parents, of course, are by far the biggest shapers of our personality. And my dad was quite a driver of my competitiveness and my intensity. my persistence. I learned at a very young age. Unfortunate. Well, again, I'm going to label it as good now. I would get a 99 on a test that he would say, "Why didn't you get 100?" I would get 100. He'd say, "Why didn't you get the extra credit?" It
Yeah.
was a very demanding, very achievement driven atmosphere, and in many ways it effed me up, but in many ways it drove me to be a high achiever. But with respect to the content of my books, I'll focus on the current one, Get It Over Yourself. And
Yeah.
for me, um, the stakes are so much higher than uh, delegation for productivity. I interviewed people that said to me, "I wish I could go back because I built a nice business, but I didn't have any time with my kids."
Mm,
And then I did deathbed research and looked at um, percentages of people on their deathbed that regretted uh, uh, not working enough. Spoiler alert, there's almost no one, versus a percentage of people that regretted not having more time to spend with their family, with their friends, pursuing their passions, pursuing more travel. Um, People make decisions that they don't think about until they're on their deathbed. And then they're thinking, "Oh, man, why didn't I have more time for this, this, and this?" And my goal with Get Over Yourself is to help people find that time back, bring that freedom back. Um, and if you're an entrepreneur, then perhaps you've already taken those steps. But in my experience, a lot of people become entrepreneurs because they want the freedom, and then they end up spending all their time working on their business. And so, maybe that's a little bit contra indicated to what they really wanted. And my goal with the book is to help more people be able to prioritize what's most important to them. And it doesn't have to be your kids. I mean, I'm very proud of the fact that 3 o'clock every day I pick my son off the school bus and I spend the next few hours. I shut off my phone and I spend the next few hours with him, doing his homework, taking him to baseball, having a catch with him. It's really, really fulfilling for me. But if you're watching and listening and you don't have kids, or your kids aren't your thing, then figure out what it is. Maybe it's your health and you're
yeah.
exercising every day. Maybe it's travel. Maybe it's dating. Maybe it's taking care of your parents. There's so many things it might be. Chances are it's not responding to emails like that. I mean, that's not what I mean, I've really never met anyone that's passionate about responding to emails, for example. So how can you delegate that work? How can you find others to hire or partner with to split that work up so that things can get done, but you can really prioritize what's most important to you in your life? That's really the deeper meaning behind this latest book.
Yeah. And is that part of like, I feel like that's kind of maybe the hook of how you can um shift perspective, right? Which is like you taking these data points and you're saying, hey, look, this percentage of people laying on their deathbed, this is what they found important. Do you want to be that person that's laying on their deathbed and saying the same things, right? Like because statistically speaking, you're on that path unless some drastic change happens. I mean, how is that kind of like, I guess maybe the way that you try to approach it in the hopes that people get like that kind of wake up call moment? Because I feel like that's where obviously I think like the people reading this book and probably have read your other books also are in a position where they want some kind of change, right? I think that's obviously the beginning part. Like you're not going to put this in front of somebody that's content in being a complainer, but like if there's somebody that wants to change a facet of their life, pick up this book. Like I feel like this is something that could potentially get them over that hurdle. And is that part of your thinking of like how you structure your books is like in this way of like using data interviews and then helping use that to formulate the proof for change?
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. Um, I have a thesis, and then I test that thesis, and then I hope to build a compelling argument, right, for change, to your point. And um, people need to want to change, of course. But I think, if I look back at my career and I sort of think about my most fulfilling moments, well, at least with respect to my books, my most fulfilling moments have come from people that have written to me, years after they've read a book and of mine, and they said, "Wow, this really was the catalyst for me to make these changes." And yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of that. The Art of People is all to your point earlier about sort of the ultimate the thread in a lot of my books is about people skills and the importance of developing relationships with people and also being other-minded. um it's hard to be other-minded because we live in our own brains and selves, and we're not other-minded naturally. We're selfish. We're think like, what do we want and need, and I mean, that's okay, but it doesn't necessarily produce results. What produces results is going around thinking truly, how can I help you? How can I give you great content right now, Chris? How can I help the other person that I'm trying to sell my apprentice? How can I really help them solve their problems? How can I how can I having a how can I help you mentality, having an other-minded mentality, having a mentality of gratitude and acts of kindness is in the long run going to end up serving us. That's the paradox that I wrote about in Art of People. And then in Likable Business, I'll just give this one a very quick plug because that is my best written book from the reviews. So objectively speaking, it's my best written book, and it's my worst selling book by far. No one's read the book. I can't even find a copy in my office because it has a horrible cover, and everyone judges a book by its cover, as it turns out. And I learned the hard way that lesson. But that book, Likable Business, talks about um, being instead of the sort of traditional top down my way or the highway type approach of leadership, much more of a servant leadership. How can I help you? How can I listen better and be a servant leader? That's the focus of Likable Business, which again nobody's read, so there's zero chance anyone that's watching this or listening has read it, and you might not even be able to find it, but it's a good one.
Got it. Got it. As we're rounding up on time here, I would be curious. It's like, do you have any plans or any ideas for another book, a potential sixth book, and any thesis that you are exploring, that is plugging into your curiosity? I think about, like, I don't know. I think like a organic one is one around AI, right? And I think the topic of AI, and specifically, I think a lot of the books that you're talking about is the very human aspect of the individual, how we are as human beings, how we generate relationships, what are the psychological wins losses that we get from every interaction. Obviously you have AI that's out there is trying to mirror some aspects of that. Um, I think there's some players out there that are really trying to deliberately mimic the human experience, and then there's those that understand this is more of a supplement and then are positioning it in that way. Curious if you have any takes or thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I'll answer both questions. First, I'm fascinated by AI and very interested in but I'm not going to write a book about it. But I do think that it's going to be. I have a good friend working on a really big concept in AI, for example, that I can't reveal, but it's wonderful proof to me of just how big AI is going to be, and large language learning models, GPT type solutions in the next few years. It's going to be huge. And for any entrepreneurs out there, it is an enormous, enormous land grab. There is massive, massive opportunity over there. So think of a unique problem and a unique niche within the very, very broad world of AI and solve it. And that's a good place to start for sure. And of course, humans will be around forever, and AI will get better and better, and we'll get better and better at managing those tools and delegating to AI. In fact, can get over yourself. There's a whole chapter on delegating to ChatGPT and
Hmm.
delegating to AI, because so many people say to me, "Well, Dave, I can't delegate. I don't have any team. I don't have enough people. I can't afford it." Dude, delegate your stuff to AI. You'll be amazed at how much you can get done. Um, all that said, I will answer your actual question, and my sixth and final book will be about health and wealth. So I want to go even broader and even sort of deeper about the connection between um, my definition of holistic wealth, because of course, when we think of wealth, we think of money, And I've been very fortunate to build financial wealth for myself. But I think wealth is so much more important and so much bigger in the sense of emotional wealth, human connection wealth, and the connection between a broader version of wealth and our own health, mental health, social health, spiritual health, and of course physical health. So I think that will be the last one. We'll see. Maybe I'll come back on in a couple of years and talk about that one for you.
Awesome. Very cool. On that note, want to just say thank you so much for taking the time today, sharing just your insights, your journey and experience. Super, super interesting, very enlightening.
Well, thank you for having me. My pleasure. And I do office hours for anyone in the world that wants to meet with me, and no strings attached whatsoever. You go to scheduledave.com, and every Thursday afternoon, I spend an hour meeting with anyone in the world that wants to meet with me. So for anyone out there that's watching or listening, feel free.
We'll definitely share that link too. Cool.